All right, guys, so I'm here with Natahlia Moors from Nations Rugby. Just a little insight into female sevens and kind of a bit of backstory about who she is and what she does and why she's on the path that she is. So, Tals, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So, sorry, I'm so nervous. My name is Natahlia Moors. I am 22 at the end of the year. Full Samoan, and I've been pretty much living back and forth between Brisbane and Auckland for the last year or so. Born in Auckland, but raised here in Brisbane. Did little athletics growing up from about 8 years old till I was about 15, 16. And then I just played like 15s for a team called North Brisbane Rugby Club, and I was only 15. Then got into Queensland Sevens, and then ended up playing Australian Youth Olympics for the Aussie Under-18s or Aussie Schoolgirls team. And then I went over to Auckland for a bit as well.
Okay, cool. So, growing up doing athletics, I'm from an athletics background as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was that through like club? Were you a sprinter, like a field athlete? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
So I was kind of doing everything, pretty much pushed and pressured by my parents to even do it in the first place. But as I grew older, I was pretty much a 100, 200, 400 meter runner, anything over I didn't really like because I'm really lazy. But yeah, just 1, 2, 4 and yeah.
Okay, and why did you stop athletics? At that kind of 15, 16 age bracket?
Yeah, I think what people find is that at that age where you're about 15, 16, there's not many people competing, like at a club level. Like a lot of girls obviously do it through school, but when you're doing it, running for club, like the numbers drop off, and that was just like me. So I moved to touch and rugby a little bit. But yeah, I just didn't really enjoy it as I grew older.
Cool. And how'd you find the change from a solo sport into a team environment?
To be honest, not that great, just because I am pretty selfish. But it was, I think, a team sport like rugby, it's obviously quite different to running anyway. Like you have to tackle people and you can't just run away from them. That's not really how it works. But yeah, it was fine. I feel like I get along with everyone pretty well, but just obviously the contact of it all was tough.
Okay, so I know in full well in athletics you go from, and you know that 15, 16 age bracket in club is a big drop off, especially 5, 6 years ago where there was no age groups above that in club athletics. So that's very understandable. But how do you go from? I know athletics is you have to commit a lot. You know, training 3 to 5, 6 times a week, 2 times a day, to what theoretically is club rugby, where you're 2 times a week for 2 hours and half of it's social and laughs and hanging out with the crew. How did you find that shift in one where you're so focused and so driven to one where it's semi-social?
Yeah, well, I think playing for Norths, they were exactly that, real social, everyone's like family, so it was really hard. It was actually really hard for me to keep up, I guess, the standard of training I was supposed to be doing. But I think I'm lucky in the sense where I have my parents, or had my parents who were very strict and make sure that I'm very disciplined. So I always had to do extra trainings on my own or with certain coaches anyway, on top of our club trainings that we had Tuesday, Thursday as well. Okay,
so what you mentioned there about coaches, like what external coaches were you having to train under?
So I had an athletics coach growing up. So in school, even once I finished athletics, club athletics, I was very competitive in high school. So I had a Queensland running coach who I would go to about 3 or 4 times a week, especially grade 11 and 12, so that's 16, 17 age. And I would train with him, about 3 or 4 times a week. And then I would also see just one of the trainers at our rugby club as well, who would take me through S&C stuff, twice in the morning during the week as well.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like you're pretty driven, you like hard work, you don't shy away from, even though you mentioned you're lazy. My dealings with you is we've got to push and prod you a little bit, but where did the desires in rugby come from? Like, what made you, what's the desire in rugby? Like, where does that kind of build?
Well, I think growing up, my whole family is very sporty, but I grew up watching my dad and mum play rugby for a club level. My dad played a little bit of rep stuff as well. So I kind of just, I wouldn't say maybe a desire, but I was kind of just pushed in that direction and I kind of just ran with it. But I think when you see certain plays on TV as well, like although there wasn't much women's rugby growing up, I obviously watched the All Blacks a lot, and I always kind of wanted to be like on that certain level as them.
Okay, so high aspirations in rugby or whatever you're pushed towards. I imagine you probably had similar goals to go to the Olympics with that athletics pathway and stuff. You got to go to the Junior Commonwealth Games, or Junior Olympics, sorry.
Yeah, Youth Olympics.
Youth Olympics. So what's that? Explain that experience. Like, how was that? That'd be pretty...
Yeah, so it was actually the first time, I guess, I started playing sevens. And I just played for, my school didn't have a sevens team, so I played for Marsden State High School in like an all-girls or all-school girls comp, where I then was selected for Queensland. We then played nationals, I guess, where we were selected for the Aussie schoolgirls team. And it was the very first one, so it was different. Like, I'd never been in an environment like that, and I think still I was like always like, oh, I thought I was going to play for New Zealand, so that was really weird, but the most amazing opportunity. Like, it was so much fun, and just like I said, being around that type of environment where it seemed so professional and so like the standards were so high. It was quite amazing. It was pretty great.
Cool. So what's some of the external struggles being an athlete, especially a young female athlete? So things like, you're mentioning your workload with training. How does that affect your income? Things like that, family, time, social life. Like, what's some of those external things you really struggle with from that pathway of maybe 16, study, everything like that?
Yeah, well, I didn't, I guess I graduated when I was 16 years old, turning 17. I didn't really have, not the opportunity to go to uni, but my priorities were just somewhere else. And I think once I was involved with that Aussie side, I didn't really work or anything. My sole focus was always rugby. And I don't think it was so much a struggle, but a choice that I made not to, not to do normal, I guess, teenage things where I was like, a lot of my friends were partying or drinking, and I don't drink, so I was always like, no, it's all right, I'll just stay home and train and do everything. But right now, I think it's like I'm still going through I have training, but I have to work full time, but I have to manage injuries, I have to go see my physio. Like, that's a big struggle for me right now, and even physically for anyone or for any woman. Like, we're expected to work, and I'm expected to clean my house and cook dinner as well. So it's hard, but I think I don't think it should be a struggle, but more like the decisions you have to make. Okay,
cool. What's some of we're touching on a few things here. How does that affect you psychologically? One, as in not your mental state, but one as in how you feel day in, day out, like stresses, anxiety, pressure, things like that. And then also the next question leading on to that, which you can flow into, is how does that affect your performance? Like, are there times when the build-up of external life affects what you're doing on the gym, in the field, or training, or anything like that?
I think, I'm a very emotional person. So for me personally, I get affected quite easily. Whether people realize or not, I'm very I just wear my heart on my sleeve. So if I'm having a bad day or If training's not going good, or right now I'm half injured, and that is emotionally draining for me, because it's just such a steep climb to get back to where I guess I'm supposed to be. The pressure's hard, especially when you're trying to crack such a high level, or try and get up to a level where you want to be. It's hard, and I try not to let it get to me as much, and I try and just go with the flow. But I guess the pressure for anyone at this level, or at any level, or trying to get to a level that they're not at, is definitely tough on anyone.
Okay, cool. I like that. So you mentioned you made the Aussie Youth Olympic team, and you didn't go on to Aussie Sevens. There's walls there. There's things happen. Without going into politics or anything like that, just what are some of the walls from your point of view that you've faced that you think have stopped your, I guess, or not stopped, but hindered your pathway?
I was doing Aussie stuff when I was 17, 18. After the Youth Olympics or Youth Olympic Festival, I did my knee, which I had to have surgery on. And I think just once I was back running, or back, steady playing, it was hard for me to get, or I felt like I didn't get the opportunity again through them. And I think once that happens, you're just like, I didn't really know where to go from there. My knee was definitely one of them, but I think as well, just my priorities weren't where they were supposed to be. So I think once I did my knee, my headspace was looking at other things, or trying to focus on something different to keep my mind off it, off not being involved in that, in that team or in that squad anymore.
Okay, and what are some of those things? Like, where does someone who's been so sports driven their whole basically growing up life, at that kind of critical age where you're in a massive development point as a young woman, what are those things? Like, what do you turn to? You mentioned you don't drink, you're not a big partier. Where does it go? Like, how did you feel at that moment? Like, your whole world just basically fucking imploded. How do you cope with that?
I think I'm a big, and I was raised as a big turner to family, I think.
Cool.
So I'm very lucky where my family and my people who I surround myself with are always there to support me no matter what. But I tried, I guess, going to uni and just not focusing as much on rugby. And when I did it, I was playing rugby. It was just like social, muck around with my family or with the girls. But it wasn't. I don't think I turned to anything bad, or I didn't start drinking or anything crazy like that. But just trying not to think about rugby, or trying to, I guess, pretend that rugby wasn't on my mind, and it was just always family, friends. Probably boys a little bit too, but yeah, just...
But it chewed you up on the inside, yeah?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. It's interesting to find out different people's coping mechanisms and how they deal with things. So, I know where you're at now. What was the changing moment for you? That, you've basically, your world's imploded, shit hits the fan, then what? You're 18 years old, or 17, 18, what next?
Well, I was pretty much forced or pressured by my parents to move to Auckland. So I moved there in 2015, which was actually probably the best thing I've ever done. And it wasn't what I wanted, but maybe what I needed. So I went over to Auckland. I played for the club I guess I play for now, and it's Ponsonby Rugby Club. I then played Auckland Storm, which is our provincial Auckland team for the WPC. And then I played Auckland Sevens for pretty much the whole Seven season. And that's what I did in 2015. I then moved back last year in 2016 and pretty much did nothing. And then just recently got back into it seriously too.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned you're back into it seriously. Everyone knows you're a part of the Blackferns development squad. How did that opportunity come about? What's the plan now moving forward? Like, where does that whole situation sit for you at the moment?
So I said I moved back last year. I did pretty much nothing, and was just not really into rugby, or I guess kind of fell away from the love of it. It wasn't until one of the Auckland Storm members, or she's even a Blackfern, Teresa, just messaged me, I think a day or two after Christmas, and was like, you should come play. Auckland, we have nationals coming up, but really are lacking depth in our squad. Just come over. So I went over pretty much a few days before New Year's, or a day or so before New Year's, and then I played in a tournament, or it's what we call like a warm-up tournament, called the Mount, and then I played nationals for Auckland as well. And pretty much just got an email the week I flew back to go back to work, saying that I was involved in that wider squad and that I would need to be available for certain dates, and that was pretty amazing. We then went to Japan and we had a few games against like Hong Kong, Cook Islands, which was cool. And yeah, we've just been in and out of camps ever since. And what's coming up? We have, I go to Japan in a few weeks with them. They're then taking a team to Central Coast Sevens, which I'm hopefully going to be in. And then, yeah, it's just back to our province teams, or our provincial teams, where we start prep for nationals and Dubai Sevens as well, which we're all looking to kind of crack.
Okay, cool. So as in, like, I can imagine how that works. You're a part of a squad. You're, what is it, a 5-hour flight away from your squad? Like, it's not like you can just go to their trainings or learn from their coaches or anything like that. You're basically a solo trainer, but involved in a team game. What are some of the conflicts that you come up with, up against in your current state? Like, what's some of the challenges that are really struggling you at the moment?
Like you said, I'm pretty much on my own, but involved in such a great team. So I don't really have anyone to, I guess, train with, or not so much train with, but like there's no one here for me to work with that I should be working with. And I'm lucky where I have, the Icons gym, and where I have our Nation's Sevens girls that I'm able to run around with, but I don't have, I guess, the support that they would have, being in that sort of environment. I don't really get that over here, which is maybe not a conflict, but a decision I've made, and I could have moved back, but I guess chose family for now. But yeah, just obviously having to travel every few weeks back and forth, money-wise, that's hurting my bank account. But yeah, just, traveling. I have still am trying to work full-time here in Brisbane as well. So yeah, it all comes together, but like I said, my decision, and something that I'm willing to keep trying to work at until I have to move over.
Okay, cool. What's some of the, you've mentioned a lot of the teams you've made and things you've done. What's your greatest sporting achievement?
I would honestly say making Auckland. And a lot of people would probably think I would have said Aussie. But I think what I've said to my mum quite a few times is that I would play Auckland for the rest of my life, then play for another country, or anyone else, just because I've never felt so at home with that team and in that environment. But yeah, definitely. Sorry, I'm so sick. Definitely making Auckland was amazing. Okay,
so as we know here, rugby is as much off-field as it is on-field. What's some of your greatest off-field achievements?
Off-field. I think anything that I feel like I've made my parents proud, that's that's big for me, I
and
think.
what give us an example?
I graduated high school. That was, I mean, wouldn't say I'm not dumb, but like, I'm not smart, but like I said, my priorities in high school were not my academics. So something like I felt like I made my parents really proud then, but just becoming, I guess, more independent, that's been such an achievement for me because I grew up being completely spoiled by my dad and my mum as well. But yeah, just having a little bit more independency just because my dad loves me and I'm his favourite, so I always had everything given to me, and me working for my own stuff, I think that's an achievement, I guess.
So you're the favourite, so that's going to cause some dramas after that.
Everyone knows.
Gets back home.
Everyone knows I'm the favourite.
A lot of people, the transformation people talk about in our general context is always physical. You mentioned there, you kind of tapped on it a little bit, becoming independent. Is that, when you were younger, was that something you struggled with? Like, where's the internal, I guess, transformation of you from where you've gone from being this young athlete into a senior athlete, but at the same time, the off field? Like, you know, you're turning into a young woman. There's a lot of pressures there as a young female. You mentioned them at home with cooking and all that. So, how do you cope with that, or what's the transformation there? Like, how were you used to be, and how are you now?
I think, like I said, I was, you know, all three of us, my siblings, we grew up very privileged. Everything was always given to us. Decisions were always made for us. And I think even growing up, even as an adult, I could always turn to my mum and be like, what do I do? Or, Mum, can you book my doctor's appointment? You know, like just things, the littlest things we would always turn to our mum. And I think when I moved to Auckland, even though I was, you know, this 18, 19, 20-year-old, and everyone was like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. I was always like, Mum, should I do that? Or, Mum, what are we doing? And, you know, and that's just how we grew up. You know, our mum was very hands-on and very, no, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing, that's what you're doing. And that's how we grew up. And I think what I've learned, especially over the last year, is to trust my own gut as well. I think traveling back and forth has made me develop that more, I guess, in my life, as I can't always be like, Mum, what am I doing? Or ask for her, or expect her to help me. I think I had to make a lot of decisions on my own over the last few months, or over the last year, I guess, that normally I would have probably asked my mum. But knowing that I am a grown adult now, like I've had to decide on things that have been tough, and that transition was hard, but it's something that I feel like I'm really growing leaps and bounds with.
Okay, cool. Two more questions. The first question is a real tough one. You're not in any squad. Like, yes, development, but at the end of the day, you're not there. Why? Like, you've had all these opportunities. Why are you not contracted at the moment?
I think this is the first sort of opportunity I've taken seriously, and I don't think I took it seriously till very recently. Like I said, I moved over when I was in 2015. It's now 2017, and I think when I moved over, it's not because I wanted to do it. It's because someone else wanted me to do it. And I didn't take that opportunity with both hands. I think I was just like, yeah, I'm living somewhere else. This is amazing. But yeah, I just don't think I wanted it enough. And I think my priorities were definitely somewhere else. Whereas this time around, I'm doing it for myself, and forking out my own money so I can fly back and forth. I'm, making the time or putting as much effort as I possibly can into this opportunity, just because it's very rare for someone to get it twice.
100%. So, fast forward the track, we're 20 years down, we're 30 years down, whatever it be, and you've got a young, Natahlia Junior coming through, and she's at that 15, 16 age bracket. What can you offer her as an advice so that she doesn't make the same mistakes? What's the one thing that you could offer someone else who's in the same position as you?
It's hard because this is what I'm going through with, I think, my little sister right now. Anyone that has the opportunity or has the talent, I feel like I would be able to support. Like I'm very supportive and very caring in that aspect, but I think I would always have to tell someone, and I don't know if people would agree, but just if you're going to do it, you've got to do it for yourself, and you've got to do it 100%. I think I've made the mistake where I've just done it like 50% or whatever, and I'd never really got anywhere. And that's what I tell my sister. I was like, if you're going to do it 100%, and do not worry about anything or anyone else. Like, the results will fall into place. Even if I had my own little daughter, I wouldn't want to force it upon them, but just strongly encourage, maybe.
Okay. That's interesting. Like, I'll add a point B on there. Do you think that growing in your own journey around that 15 to 18 bracket, that you had no idea what you wanted, like as in a dream sense? Like, it's not like you grew up going, I want to play NRL, or, boys get it easy. They have clear idols from the day they're born. Girls are only starting to get them now. What are, is that why it was only 50%? Like, is that why you had no internal motivator? It wasn't your dream you were following, it was the pathway presented to you, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think even up until I was 20, maybe, I didn't know what I wanted. And I think it's something that a lot of girls struggle with, or presented, I guess, with the fact that we're probably supposed to be housewives, or aspire to be like a wife and stay-at-home mum, and things like that are like what we see. And growing up, that's kind of what I thought I was going to be like. I thought I would be pregnant and have babies and do things like that. I had no aspirations in rugby apart from knowing that I was pretty good. Like, I had some skills. I wasn't like, oh my God, I want to be like a Blackfern, or like, that wasn't something I grew up wanting to be until I was about 20 years old, when I was like, fuck, I really want to crack it. Okay,
cool. Well, guys, that's pretty much it. We're done for today. Thank you, Tals, for coming in and having a chat to us at the Icons Training Centre. We wish you all the best in the rest of your training. It's very unlucky that you have to train with me for the next 4 weeks until you go. Thank you so much for coming in, and we look to chat to you next time.